And record now.
Yeah, it's recording now, right?
Yes. Amazing. Go on.
Perfect. Yeah. So a lot of people, especially people who are new to ISEC, think that lead spaces, are those cool spaces where you come with all your problems, you pour it out with your co-delegates, and everything is going to be all right. Well, I wish it was like that, but unfortunately, it's not. Of course, lead spaces are a lot about reflection and trying to figure out where do we stand as an individual and how can we move forward in our pursuit of becoming a leader through going through an inner and outer journey, right? But it's not going to solve everything in this 1 hour, so just be mindful of that. Coming back to the topic, the lead space is about taking risks when it's needed, which is part of one of the defining elements of our leadership development qualities, right? And it is part of the leadership development quality of solution oriented. And as you might know, there are 4 leadership qualities, and every leadership quality has 3 different defining elements. So we are going to focus on taking risks, right? So just before we go ahead, I want to know from a couple of you guys what brings you here. And what I mean by this question is, you guys had a couple of options for selecting which lead space you want to participate in, right? So I just want to understand from a couple of you guys, what was your objective of coming to this particular lead space? What are you looking forward to from this particular space? We only have 1 hour, right? So just quickly, anybody can just turn on their mic and share, rather than having to wait for someone to go. So yes, let's quickly do that. Anyone can go. Let's do that quickly, so we have enough time for the content itself. Nee, are you here? If maybe you can just point one person, maybe.
Maybe maybe Julie. Julie, you can share. Or maybe Lena, you can say as well.
Okay, so I think I can share what brings me here. For the session itself, I think will be I want to understand more regarding what's the model or what's kind of the approach that we can have when it comes to making the decision or even taking the risk or like dealing with the unknown thing lah. Yeah, I think that's all for me.
Yes, thank you for sharing that. So something about understanding what kind of approach can I have while making decisions, while taking risks, specifically in this particular period of time. Anything else that anyone would like to add? Let's go quickly.
So I'd like to share.
Sure.
I think during the course of your MC term, you come across a lot of situations where you have to make some tough choices, and you have to, if you reach out places that are like a crossroad, right? You either go here or you go there. Especially during these times when everything is so uncertain and it's so difficult, any choice that you make, I think months down the line can turn into a disaster if the external context doesn't really align with the decision you've made. But sometimes those gambles and those risks are very important to take, because if you don't take them and you stay complacent, then you're really not doing anything in your term, are you? So I think when I was looking at all the options, I felt like I need to sort of learn to take those risks more, because we're at a very crucial point in the MC term. And right now, making those decisions to take risks in the replanning, I think they will like set the course for all of the MC term, and possibly even for my successors term when things get better. So I just really wanted to, get that mindset to understand, how do I get that power to take the risk?
Amazing, amazing. So there can be two types of people: risk avoiders, and then people who just take every sort of risk. And just like you mentioned, in this particular context, it's extremely important to understand what kind of risk that we are taking, so that it is not causing a lot of negative consequences. But at the same time, it's important for us to keep taking them, for us to be able to progress. Otherwise, it's just managing things here and there. So yeah, thank you very much for sharing that. I think I have a decent amount of understanding, and then I would love to hear from more of you in the coming slides as well. So I got a perspective about your thought process from the space. I would just like to share my thought process and my expectations as well from you guys as to how are we going to go with the flow of the space. Right. First is be mindful and present. Right. As I mentioned already, this is a lead space, and the outcome of the space will completely depend on you, how much present you are during the space. And when I say present, it's not just being online, but being able to actually reflect, and being able to actually ponder upon the questions that are going to come ahead. And the benefit of this space will completely depend on how you spend the next 1 hour. Second is, we don't have a lot of time, right? It's only a 1 hour lead space, right? Usually, it's a higher amount of time, but because it's online, we have to manage that as well. So be very proactive. When I ask to share, let's just quickly jump into that, rather than having to wait for people. Third is, let go of all the presumptions, right? Everything that you might have about risk or about decision making, for the time being, just don't think much about them, and go with the flow. The fourth thing that I would like you to keep in mind is, this is not a risk management or decision making session. What I mean by that is, since this is a lead space, I'm not going to talk a lot about technicalities or processes in terms of how to actually go about identifying what risks are good or what risks are bad, because that would be a completely different workshop in itself, right? And it can take already an hour or two. So I'm not going to go into the technicalities, but rather what should be the approach while you are facing risks, and how you can go about taking them. So that is going to be the focus of the space. And you guys are already MCVPs, right? So you guys have also delivered a lot of spaces to your delegates, to your members, LCPs, LCVPs, right? So don't expect like too many new things in this particular space. A lot of the things that I'm going to speak about are probably things that you've already heard about from different places or through your experiences. But the point of this space is, are we able to connect to all those things and put them in perspective, so that we can actually make them into a better use for the given period of time, and for the next 4 days of the conference that you have, what kind of things that you really need to learn about this particular defining element of the leadership quality, right? So that's how the space is going to be about. So quickly, starting up, what is risk? I'm just going to give a very brief basic definition, which all of us know obviously, is situation that involves exposure to danger, something that might cause harm or make a loss for us, right? And in simple terms, it is basically the possibility of something bad happening, or uncertainty about the effects or implications of an activity, and that might potentially harm something that we value as human beings. And there are two keywords for us to focus on over here, which is uncertainty and negative undesirable consequences. This is what particularly relates to a risk, right? Every decision will have consequences, and there are certain decisions that you will have to take, and certain decisions you might not know. The ones that are completely uncertain and out of your control fall into the category of risk, right? And there can be so many different types of risk: small risk, big risk, but then calculable risk, uncalculable risk, ambiguous risk, and risk that you can never figure out how you have to approach them. So different types of risk come with different consequences as well. So now I want you guys to take the next 5 to 7 minutes that we will have as a self-reflection space, and I want you guys to have a conversation with yourself. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put up a few questions over here, and I'll play soft music on the background as well. I want you guys to reflect on these questions before we jump into the further part of the space itself, right? And I really want you guys to be able to actually ponder upon these questions in a really meaningful way, taking into consideration the past 4 months that you have been working in your MCs as well, right? So the first question is, what were the risks that you knew you would have to take when you were about to start your term? You don't have to particularly like list down all the risks, but you can just visualize as well, what were the types of risks that you already knew were going to come in this term when you were starting the term. And you can just take the time and you can jot down, you can journal, you can type whatever you want, but do give a thought about the questions. Okay, I will just go on to the next question. If you are still thinking on the first question, you can continue and then just join in once you are done. The second question that I would like you to ponder is, what were the risks that you were actually posed with through these past 4 months? So in the first question, you thought about the kind of risk that you were already expecting. Now I would like you to think about the risks that actually came, and how much of those risks actually were similar to the ones that you had already expected, and how much of them were new or risks that you never expected would come in these past 4 months. Okay, just adding on to the next question as well. How did you feel when those risks cropped up, and how did you respond to them? What was your first immediate, thought or feeling when you felt, oh my God, I have to take this risk, or I have to decide about what do I need to do for this particular aspect that has come up. What was the feeling like, did it make you feel nervous? Did it make you feel excited? Did it make you feel anything else? And how did you respond to them? You don't need to like write down every single thing that you did, but what was your approach like? Going ahead, have you been avoiding risk through your term? And of course, like, there are certain risks that might have been avoided, certain risks that might have been taken. But I want you to think on a broader perspective. Where do you fall in the majority aspect? Have you been avoiding, and if yes, what has been stopping you from taking them? And if no, then what made you take them, and what was the outcome like? And okay, moving ahead, what are the most challenging risks that you think are lying ahead of you in the rest of the months for your MC term? And what might be holding you back from taking them? Okay, perfect. Moving ahead, before we just jump into the next part, I would like a couple of people again to share your thoughts What were your reflections? What kind of things that came up? Anything interesting that you would like to share? Any couple of people, just turn on your mic very quickly so everyone else can also understand and learn from each other.
So I will go.
Yeah.
Okay, so before the times that so like the only risk that came into my mind is the pandemic. So yeah, like due to the pandemic, so that we won't be able to run exchange, and then like if no exchange, no revenue, and then no sustainability. So I only thought that like after 4 months, during the 4 months, the risk that we are I that we face are so many things about the like legality stuff, also the financial risk, also death related stuff, and also the like safety and health risk, or and also about the like membership as well. There are so many things that we face during the 4 months. Then like how we respond to those risks is like we found the root cause, and then after that like we find how to solve them, and then after that like we solve those risks. Avoid how did I avoid or not? Of course, like we did, because if we take those risks, and then like it might affect the sustainability of the whole entity. So yeah, that's why like we have to avoid as much as we can. Like avoiding means that like we don't take we just avoiding means like we just don't remove those risks. Like we try to remove those risks, and then like avoid not to have the consequences of the risk. Yes, the risk that might happen in the future, it might be the bankruptcy. Is due to the lack of financial reserve, and then like it might affect to the next MC time. Yeah, it's like what I see. It's all about me.
Mm-hmm. And thank you very much for sharing that. And anybody else who would like to probably add on what he already mentioned, anything that you would like to share in terms of certain non-functional risk that you probably thought about, and something that might be holding you back. Let's go quickly so we can move ahead as well.
Okay, maybe I can share.
Yeah, sure.
So you mentioned non-functional risks. I guess for me and my MC team, because of the virtual setup, it's really challenging, and I guess for everyone, I believe it's really challenging to have difficult conversations because you're not face to face. And in our context, we really want to change the way we do our business model. So it's always a mental challenge of, do we talk to our members like they don't understand the problem, or do we involve them with the problem? So it's always a risk to have difficult conversations, but at the end of the day, we always do it for the right reasons, and we don't do it because we want to ruin things. We want to improve things. So yeah, that would be my thoughts.
Amazing. Yeah, this is a pretty common aspect as well. How much detail do we involve our membership in? Because too much detail might just scare them off. Too very little detail might not be able to connect us with them, and that's a valid risk as well. And the most important aspect for us to understand over here um, is when we are posed with any risk, the first and foremost reaction of our brain is to avoid them, right? Because as you remember from the definition, risk involves with uncertainty, right? And the human mind doesn't like unknowns. right? So whenever the human brain is faced with an uncertainty, the immediate response is to, avoid that, so as to avoid any possible change that you might have to take. And that's a biological aspect as well. But then there's a really good quote that I love from John Allen Paulos, is that uncertainty is the only certainty there is, and knowing how to live within security is the only security, right? Nobody knows what's going to happen tomorrow. Nobody knows what's going to happen 2 months down the line, what's going to happen with the pandemic. A year back, I was sitting as a delegate in APLS, dreaming for my second semester for my entity collectively to do operations and everything. And suddenly the pandemic has hit. So nobody knows, right? So everything is uncertain, but then that's the only thing that we know of. And being allowing yourself to be able to live with this insecurity is the best security that you can allow yourself to be. And that's why I was saying as well, and all of you, I'm assuming all of you would have seen this next slide and would have told your members as well, right, that this is your comfort zone, and then there is a magic that happens which is outside of that, and that zone itself is your risk taking zone. You are in your comfort zone, and there is a zone of courage that you need to develop, and that allows you to embark into uncertainty, right? And we have seen this, we have told this to our members, and we have practiced that as well. But whenever a new risk pops up, our immediate response again goes back to staying in the comfort zone, and that's completely natural. So the idea is, how do we keep reminding ourselves that I have to push myself beyond that zone that allows me to just be safe and not take any risks or take any adventures. um, and the magic happens outside the comfort zone. So I want to really share my magic story with you guys as well. Of course, not literally magic, but something that really impacted me as an ISECer, and that allowed me to go beyond in so many different roles in my ISEC journey. And that was the story of my year as an LCP while I was leading my EB. And this is the picture of my closing conference with my EB when we had already finished our term. And we were so happy by the end of our term because we were able to achieve so many things that we could have never imagined at the beginning of our term. Of course, we grew in exchanges. We did a lot of new initiatives and all of that, and we got a lot of rewards as well. But the biggest achievement for us as the EB was that a lot of members from our LC were actually taking different leadership roles in their ISEC journeys ahead. We were an EB of only 6 people. We were the smallest EB in our LC. Before that, there used to be EBs of 8, 9, 10 people, and we were only 6 people. Out of 6, 3 of us were actually continuing in MCs either abroad or ISEC in India, and one of them, the other one person was also my successor as an LCP. So a lot of people continued taking different roles, and that was our big achievement. But when we look back in hindsight about what allowed us to reach there were so many different things that happened, right? There's this quote that says, that large victory that you see has been possible because of so many small victories that went unnoticed, right? And in order to be actually have those victories, you have to take certain risks, certain decisions that you might not have taken earlier to be able to break through. And one of those decisions or risk actually came in at this point in time. This was in April while we were in our first quarter as an EB, and this was the picture from our local conference, right? And the reason why I'm putting this over here is because before we were going into this local conference, lot of our members were coming to me specifically and my EB saying, hey, what if we did this, what if we tried this new initiative? We have certain ideas, and we would like to try this. Different people used to approach different people from the EB and come up with these different ideas, right? And since we were a very small EB, we knew that if we really want to achieve big things, we need every single person in the LC to be contributing and to be doing their part to be able to achieve that, right? So the whole idea started developing into this, behavior that we wanted to drive in the LC, that we want everybody, including myself as an LCP, my EB, and my members, we want to follow this idea of hashtag just did it, right? What that really means is, if you have an idea or if you have something that could change certain processes, certain things that we are doing in our LC, you come to me as an LCP saying, hey, I have this idea, that's okay. But what I would love to hear from you is, hey, I had this idea, we tried this, and we just did it. And the idea from our side as an EB towards the members was, we do not mind what the outcome is. Whether you succeed, whether you fail, that is okay. But we want you to try as many different things as possible that you already have, ideas about. And that's the beauty of ISEC, right? ISEC is the place where it allows you to experiment and it gives you the freedom to fail. So in order to enhance this, we introduce certain aspects into the LC. We introduce certain rewards and recognitions as well, like a local committee development fund, wherein every single member from different departments can gain certain amount of funds for the kind of work that they are doing. Now, this is different from, what you might be giving your members as part of an R&R, because an R&R gives reward based on the targets that a member achieves. Whereas over here, it was any different initiative that a member is trying will get something, and that member can put in again to execute certain projects as well. And we were also giving certain investments for different ideas as well. So the whole LC was open to try different things. And that's where the whole conference was laid out. Now, of course, before we were actually moving into this thought process, there was, a sort of a fear as well. The question of the what if, and the natural tendency of our brain that, was making us scared of the worst outcomes that could happen. If we do this, if we drive down this idea of hashtag just did it, what if members who win the LCDF, who are taking certain rewards from the LC, live in a short period of time? There's no outcome. What would happen then? Or what if the projects or events that they were initiating do not work out? What would happen then? What if that get demotivated as a result? So we are encouraging everybody to try different things, and what if that doesn't work out, and people start feeling demotivated and they start leaving? Or what if it distracts them from doing our main thing, which is our operations or exchanges? Or what if it affects the brand and the culture negatively? Because if things are not working, then the culture becomes toxic, and hence the way ISEC is portrayed outside also becomes negative. Or what if it just fails miserably? And this is definitely the immediate response. But then the trick over here is to keep telling your brain about the possibilities as well. The natural tendency is to think about the worst outcomes, and it is not in your control. Your brain will do that. What if you tell your brain, yes, what if members leave? It can be a bad repercussion for the LC, but think about the possibility. What if they stay longer? How could that change things in the LC? Or what if the members learn from the different projects and initiatives that they are delivering? Even when they don't work out, it will encourage and empower them. What if they get more and more empowered instead of them getting demotivated? And what if instead of them getting distracted, they boost the exchanges through these different initiatives and exchanges? What if it enhances the brand and the culture as well? And what if it just works out wonders? And with that mindset and with that approach, we were ready to accept failures, but we just wanted to go ahead with this. And we kept on pushing and kept on pushing. And from April to July, wherein we have our national conference, the biggest national conference, this happened. So this was the picture from our LC, the delegation picture from our conference. And one of my EB members had put a post later on. Through the conference, in the 3 months, we grew in all our exchange operations that we are doing. We won an award for IGT, and most importantly, we won the best delegation award. And that is extremely a matter of pride in ISEC in India, because there are like 600 people in a national conference. There are more than 25 LCs and expansions, and your LC becomes the best delegation. That boosts the morale of the members, and everything was just driven by this idea of hashtag just did it. And in just 3 months, it changed the game for the LC. And of course, post that, people kept on moving ahead, and that led us to the end result that I already told you earlier, right? And one of the main learnings that I had from this experience was, if someone is always to blame, like this is the quote, right? And I could really connect to it from the experience itself, is that if someone is always to blame, if something goes wrong, someone has to be punished, then people quickly stop taking risks. And without risk, there can't be breakthroughs. So when we were doing the whole hashtag just did it, if members had failed and if we had repercussions for them, then the whole environment would have been very controlling, and people wouldn't have been feeling the freedom to express themselves and to be able to try different things. And that was what we really wanted to change, and make people feel that they have the freedom to try new things, to learn new things, and to fail as well. And that is the power of ISEC at the end of the day, right? So yeah, that was the year of 2016 for me, for wherein I learned these things about taking risks in itself. But then you guys might say, hey, Devik, taking risks at an LC level isn't the same as taking risks at a national level, right? And all of you are MCVPs now. So maybe this whole thing might have worked out at an LC level, but the kind of risk that you are facing might not apply to that. And I agree to you. Yes, it isn't the same as taking the risk on the MC level, but the approach and the attitude remains the same. And that is what I want you guys to focus on, thought process, right? Because the same experience shaped me to be able to take other bigger risks more effectively in future. And of course, from then on, like I had 3 MC experiences, so I had so many more risks to take on as well. But this whole thought process itself allowed me to be able to take those risks in a better way. And from this experience, cut to 3 years later, when I was just an MCP elect last year. So this was a picture from AP MCP Summit. So some of your MCPs from the previous year, you might be seeing them in the picture. We were in Malaysia last year from 12th to 15th May, right? And I was just an MCP elect. So in essence, I was still an MCVP with the tag of an MCP elect, right? So I was still more like in your shoes itself. And I was going there with a lot of excitement to learn a lot of new things for myself to begin my term, etc., etc., etc. And while I was about to leave for the summit on 10th of May from India, one of the biggest risks that I could ever imagine taking came up. And that was this. Most of you might have known this, but I'm just, throwing some light. This was the email from the PI at that point of time, saying that the IC that was supposed to be hosted in Sri Lanka last year has to be changed and shifted to a new venue. And this was on 9th of May, and I was supposed to leave early morning on the 10th. And this brought up a conversation within my predecessor and a couple of people from our MCs to host IC in India in 2 months period of time, right? We did not have a lot of time, and IC usually takes 1 year to prepare to be able to host properly. And we were already in May, and the conference was supposed to be hosted in July. And there was a lot of encouragement from AI as well. AI wanted ISEC in India to host this conference. And here I am, an MCP elect, posed with this challenge of whether to go forward with it or no. And there are so many different challenges and risks with that, right? What if the conference fails miserably and we lose a lot of money? What if people do not have a good conference experience because like it's only 2 months and we are not able to pull off? What kind of thoughts people or delegates from across the world will have about ISEC in India? How do we actually go about making things happen in 2 months? How do we go about visa? How do we go about arranging the venue? A lot of these things, right? But that is exactly when that whole thought process of looking at the possibilities really pushed us. Now, I'm not saying that just looking at the possibilities, you jump into a risk. There went a lot of process behind it. At this period of time, this was a very huge risk. So we had to employ a lot of risk management matrices, risk management practices to associate and identify what are, major risks, what are minor risks, what can be done, what cannot be done. We created a whole plan out of it as well, right? But again, after you are done with your plan, the plan will never tell you whether to take the risk or no. That is always up to you, right? And the question came back to us: should we go ahead or no? Of course, I wasn't supposed to take the final decision myself. I was taking it with my predecessor, but if I said no, we wouldn't have hosted the conference. And it was a big risk. Like, my MC team was just coming in. You guys know the period of May and June, right? You are in transition, you are learning a lot of things, la 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 la. And in that period, you have a whole responsibility of delivering a international conference. That's a huge risk, and that might derail your MC from what you want to do in your term. So many risks was there. But finally, looking at the possibilities, one of the major things that I as an MCP really wanted in my term was for ISEC in India to be having a strong refreshed identity in the global network. And that happened was ISEC in India is a feeling. The t-shirt that I'm wearing, and if you are exchangers, you might have heard about it as well, right? We thought about the possibility. We really want to rebrand ISEC in India. What would be better than the whole world coming to India at this point in time, feeling what really India is, and then getting to know our brand as well, right? That just increases so many different possibilities, and that was one of them. And of course, the second was, if we were able to successfully execute the plan that we had laid out, we would have been able to generate some sort of revenue as well that will help us in long term. So after doing all this due diligence, but most importantly going forward with our instincts, we went ahead and we had that. So this was the risk that we took from the national level, right? And again, the point over here is of the thought process, right? The approach, which is most important. And now moving forward, you might still think, okay, yes, this makes sense. This was a good example. But then we are in a pandemic, which is completely different, right? So just wait for it. Like, we went ahead, like the rest was history with respect to IC, like people who came. I hope you guys had a good time as well. But then moving forward, 6 months down the line, this is a picture of all the MCPs from 1920, right? And this is how our timeline was for semester 2. December, January, around the same timeline as you guys are, we were into replanning, right? We were having big ambitions. We were trying to dream. As ISEC in India, we had a good winter peak, and we were, hoping to grow in summer peak and do a lot of exchanges. And we move to February, we go to IPM. We meet with all the entities, we do our IR meetings, we learn a lot of strategies from AI, and we are getting ready for a massive summer peak, right? And here comes 11th March, wherein the WHO has declared COVID-19 as the pandemic, and the world is upside down, right? And from then on, a lot of unprecedented risk followed, risks that were an existential crisis for the organization, which, the worst part was we hardly had any time to plan, right? At this point in time, you guys know that you are in a pandemic and you can plan for, what to do or what not to do. Imagine one day you are just sitting with your MC, trying to figure out your LC visits and your conference agenda, and figuring out your hackathon for your summer peak. And the next day, you are posed a question, okay, we have to shut down all the operations. At this point in time, it seems a safe move to shut down operations, right? But at that point of time, shutting down operations was a risk, because there were questions like, okay, what will members learn then? What will members do? If we don't do operations, where will the money come from? If the money will not come from operations, then how will we survive ourselves? And a lot of other things, right? So many different things happened. We canceled APC while there were delegates who had bought the flight tickets. If you guys know, Euro Expo was already happening and had to be cancelled from the middle, whereas MCPs of ISEC in Asia Pacific decided before the conference itself that no, it might seem a risk to cancel the conference right now, but it is necessary and we will do it. And what allowed all of us to do that was, the faith in each other, the trust in each other, and the collaboration that we could have with each other. That was the most important thing. We were supposed to host IC in 2020 in India as well, and we had to cancel that as well. Now at that point in time, of course, we thought from the idea of possibilities, right? What if we are able to pull this off? But then when you have your risk management metrics telling you this is a complete no-brainer that you cannot take this risk, then you have to shut down your instinctive approach. And we had to cancel IC even before AI was ready to make the decision, and we had to push AI. So, the whole point being, the same thought process applied to three different aspects as well. And I can understand the kind of whole situation that you guys might be in, and the kind of risk that you might be facing, and there are a lot of unanswered questions. But then the point of this whole experience sharing that I had was, when you are facing a risk, at that moment of time you will never realize or you will never know what to do. But there are certain things, if you calm yourself down and if you allow yourself in that thought process, then it will all start allowing you to make it better. And in order for you to be able to understand it step by step, we will have a short recap before closing the space, right? The first and most important thing that I talked through my experiences itself, right, is always choose courage over fear. You will always have fear. Fear is natural, right? Anything that is unprecedented, it will give you fear. But choosing courage over fear is in your hands. And one of my leaders, my MCPs, used to always tell this, and I really like this line from him, is that your life is as beautiful as your courage. And if you really allow yourself to move beyond your fears, then it will become easy for you to handle your risks. Second is, failure is just a stepping stone, right? A lot of the risks that I also took never really worked out, and that is fine, because ISEC is the place for you to be able to actually experiment and fail and learn. And when we fail, pain is unavoidable. Yes, you will feel hurt. Failure will always make anybody feel bad, but then suffering is a choice. What do I mean by this? You failed, it is hurting you. Now constantly dwelling upon that will make you suffer more and more and more. However, acknowledging that yes, you failed, yes, you are feeling very bad, but now you have to move on. That is your choice, right? And that is in your hands. So always think of the brighter side even when you are hurting, and that will allow you to move on in a better manner. Third is have clarity of vision and ambition. When I was sharing my LCP story, the whole idea of hashtag just did it was not just people to try different things, but it was for people to try different things so that we could achieve a bigger purpose. And I was very clear of what I really want by the end of that whole experimentation process. So whenever you are taking a risk, um, always be clear what is the end objective, what is the bigger purpose, what is the bigger ambition that you are trying to take through this risk. And that will allow you to navigate and ensure that your risk takes you towards that ambition. The fourth is taking risk is not equal to taking chance, which means risk taking is not gambling, right? Because if it is that way, then you can just keep on jumping on different risks, and then the organization will shut down very quickly. No, it is taking calculated and smart risk with proper evaluation and analysis. And I haven't showed you any analysis tools over here, but I already mentioned in the beginning, right? This is something that you will also be coming across in the next 4 days through different parts of the agenda about different tools and different techniques to analyze different risks or different decisions that you might have to take. Really use the data that you have available to you, equip yourself with these different techniques, and understand what possible outcomes are getting, and then take on the risk. But also know that the tools will not just make the decision for you. The tools will tell you this is a big risk, this is a small risk. If you take this risk, this is the outcome, this is the consequence. But it will not tell you, yeah, go ahead and take it or don't take it. That will always be up to you, right? So there is no right or wrong decision when you make a decision. So always know that it is always about taking a decision and then doing everything to make it right after doing all the analysis and evaluation. However, if it still doesn't work, which chances are certain decisions will still not work, just be humble enough to acknowledge it, learn, and just move on. And know that you are not alone in this. When I was talking about IC, when I was talking about the whole pandemic, a lot of the risks we were able to take because we were able to empathize with our co-peers, with our co-MCPs, and we knew that we have people who will back us. Even when I was sharing my LCP story, the whole idea was putting trust on our membership. And if they fail, we are ready to give them the support. And if collectively as an LC we fail, then we are still together with each other and we are open to seek and receive help. This is really important. And the last thing is every choice or decision has an inherent risk and an expiry, right? So the biggest risk would be to not just take any risk. You can just sit back, you can play safe, you can manage your term. Trust me, you will not take any particular risk and you will be fine by the end of your term. But ask yourself, 1 year later down the line, once you are an alumnus or in your another role after your MC term, trying to reflect back on this experience where you can tell yourself you were this MCVP who was leading an ISEC national entity in the middle of a crisis, could have just taken this risk and breakthrough for ISEC overall in that particular country. But you didn't do that. And that was your process of growth that you missed out on. Do you really want to? So there are a lot of risks, a lot of things that you could try on. The whole idea that I shared about hashtag just did it with my membership as an LCP, imagine you try certain things like that with your commissions. Your members, your VPs are trying to do a lot of things but not really able to execute a lot of stuff. How can you give direction and then certain resources and then the freedom for them to execute? And what if they come up with some crazy solutions that you guys will eventually implement nationally. Those are things that is really important. And I mentioned over here, remember the Parkinson's law. I would like you guys to Google it post the session. What Parkinson's law is, it basically says that the more time you give to make a decision, the more time you will take. So if you give yourself less time, you can actually take certain decisions in less time. When we were MCPs and the pandemic hit, we only had 1 week to decide whether to stop operations or no. And once we decided we have to stop operations, we had to decide how are we going to cut our finances. We didn't have more time, because if we use more time, money would have flown, and a lot of things would have gone haywire. So within that period of time, we were actually able to make the decision because we didn't have any option. However, on the other hand, if we had the option of taking more time, for sure we would have taken the decision at a very long period of time, which loses the whole purpose itself. So always keep that in mind. Just to summarize and ending it up, I have a small question, which is, who has not, over here from the delegates, has not taken a single risk in your ISEC experience so far? Right? And that is a rhetoric question, because there wouldn't be anyone who wouldn't have taken any risk, because if you wouldn't have, you wouldn't have been here. Everything that has led you over here has prepared you for the experience that you are in, for the kind of challenges that you are in. Your members are relying on you right now to take this certain risk and breakthrough for ISEC in this period of time. And you have been through so many experiences where you have faced these challenges, and where you have faced these experiences where you had to take risks and move beyond. So like, the whole question is, if not you, then who, right? And we are almost running short of time. So I'm just going to run through the slides. The whole idea was a couple of people sharing with each other. But I'll just give you the questions. You can take those questions and then have these conversations in the breaks or post the agenda. The first question is for yourself to reflect upon, which is, how can I use all of my experiences that I have had to enhance my current capacity to stay courageous and take risks effectively? Right? You have taken certain risks in your past experiences as well, like the ones that I shared. How can you use those experiences to enhance your current capacity to take more risks? Then there are a couple of questions that I would like you guys to just talk with your co-MC members or other MC members, but we'll not do this right now. You can just click a picture of the questions. What are some things that struck you the most from this particular whole space, the lead space that we have, and how has your perspective on risk taking evolved through the past 60 minutes that I have been with you guys? Is there any striking thing that stuck you, that, oh, I could really use this to my benefit, or I really knew this but I was not using it, etc., etc.? And then the last question is, what do you need to work on and learn more to take risk effectively? And what are some action steps that you would commit yourself to after this space? So for example, for someone, it could be that I need to learn certain risk management practices so I can understand how to evaluate risk. For someone else, it could be, I know how to evaluate risk, but then there is this always constant self-doubt that I have while making any risk. So how can I really practice taking small risks in my daily life so I can slowly overcome my self-doubt? These are just a couple of examples, but you can think of more that you probably feel about yourself. And just before ending, I would like one or two people, maybe if you would like to share, like if you have a different thought process, different perspective, or anything that really stuck you through the past 60 minutes, and you would like to take forward.
So I don't really have any wisdom per se to share, that I have like a different thought process. I came here to learn, and I actually did learn a lot of things from this session. Thank you so much for this space. I was a little shocked at how easy it was for you as an LCP to, allow your members to just do whatever they want and actually come up with the hashtag just did it. It takes a lot of courage to actually do that, because anything can happen, right? I understand that it's a local committee level risk, but that's still a risk, because I have also been an LCVP in the past. So like I understand how wide things can get if people just start doing everything they want to do. So that was really like courageous of you to firstly do that. And then secondly, the whole decision with IC that you made, like if I put myself in that situation, I cannot even begin to imagine the stress you would have had while you were making that decision. So, I mean, and it worked out so well for you. I mean, it worked out really well. You got such a nice branding thing out of it, and like you sort of saved IC that year. I think the major thing that I've taken away from the session is that it's very important to be courageous. Like, courage takes you far. So that's one
Yes.
thing that I'm just gonna, keep in my heart after the session.
I'm glad. I'm glad. Just to like retouch, since you mentioned about the whole uh, courage about allowing the LC members to do everything. Just recall that quote, okay, that I shared. Behind every big victory, there are small, small, small victories. So yes, in the session, I just showed you, okay, this was the local conference, and then this was the national conference, and it all worked out. But in between, there were so many barriers, there were so many failures as well that happened. And yes, at that point in time, even we were really afraid, right? Like how you said, we were always thinking, what happens if this doesn't work, this doesn't work, so that is always going to be there. It's just, trying to also be able to focus on the positives, and then having certain elements that could make you feel safe as well. Is what I mean is, you have certain things that could go wrong, but if you have evaluated what could be the worst possibility, right, that could actually affect the LC or the entity overall, if you can then lay out certain preventive measures for those extreme risks, then it becomes easier for you to handle the small, small, small elements as well. Which is
Yeah.
something that is a technical part that I haven't covered in this space. So that is important. Like it is always like I explained the story, but then there is a technicality involved as well, which is important for us to be able to actually execute. But anyways, thank you very much. I guess your name is Eliazar, right? Elizar.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Nice to meet you. Anyone else? One last person who would like to share, like, what were your key takeaways or anything that you learned, or anything just that you would like to share before we close the space?
Hi, Devik. For me personally, I am someone like before I make a decision or I do something, I think about all the consequences and I think about all the what ifs, what if this happened and what if that happened. And when you shared about what if, like what are the great possibilities that can happen, that was like a wow moment for me because I don't really, I never, my thought process never happened in that way. I guess my mind was like, genetically like engineered to just think about the negative, like the consequences. But I think that is something I really will practice to see and analyze about the different kinds of possibilities that are underlined with every decision. So that is something that I'll definitely take away from this. Thank you for
Okay,
that.
thank you very much. Since like you also shared, I would just like to throw some light, which is not there in the PPT, but you can Google it later on. Is um, a couple of risk management techniques that I used, right? For the whole IC and the pandemic, we used the risk management framework that is shared by the GFB, right? I hope you guys know what the GFB is, right? And if you do not have this risk management tool from GFB, probably ask your MCP or MCVP Finance. That will help you. So for all the big technical risks, we used that, and then we used our instincts as well and stuff. For the LC story that I shared, the what if part, there is a matrix called CCB. You can Google it. CCB stands for cost, consequences, benefits matrix, right? So if like for example, this is the risk. So my risk was allowing members to explore different things. So that is not a very technical framework, but it still helps you. It was identifying what are the costs that we might have to make, not in terms of finances but in general, to be able to take this risk. If this risk doesn't work out, what would be the consequences? But then if it works out, what would be the benefits? And then you can weigh in, whether your benefits are higher than your consequences or no, and then go ahead with taking those risks, which are not necessarily very functional but still need careful diligence. Okay, nice. So I think if one last person would like to share, then that would be good. Else we can just close. Let's wait for 10 seconds if anybody would be happy to share. Okay, all right then. That was all from my side. This is the last slide that I have for you, is that it always starts with one individual. Probably you might have heard this line in your info session when you joined as a member. Uh, I certainly did, but it still stucks with me. One individual can start taking certain decisions, and that can have a strong ripple effect. And probably it could be you in your MC team and your entity that could inspire a lot of other people as well. So the only thing that I would like you to ask yourself is, are you really willing to take that defining move? That defining move of, yes, I am in a pandemic, yes, I have to think about the major risks that are affecting ISEC, but I am also willing to take certain things beyond what have been the usual way, and experiment and breakthrough for ISEC in general, because that is what ISEC really needs right now. So yeah, thank you very much for being here. It was a pleasure being back with ISEC, and I wish you all a very good time for the next 4 days in your APOP. Yes, have a great day, and bye bye.